Uh, yeah, computer.
All right. All right. Well, here we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Rennae Stubbs Tennis Podcast. What a treat I have for you all today. The one and only, now Grand Slam champion, Madison Keys. If I had a clap thingy that I could afford, I would have done that. But welcome, my friend.
Thanks.
Wow, wow, wow. First of all, the first thing I want to say to you is before the Australian Open started, Jessica Pegula has told everybody this. I saw her in the players' concierge area, the Australian Open, and I walked up and I said, "Hey, girl, great week last week. Way to make it through the finals. Good start to the year." And she goes, "Rennae, if Madison plays anything like she did against me in the third set, she's winning this tournament." And I was like, "Okay, that's some pretty high praise from you." Anyway, sure enough, she was right. So I'm just going to give Jess all the credit here. None to you.
She texted me after our match. I mean, we traveled together as well, but she texted me like I got this long message as we're like meeting at each other at the airport. And she was like, "No, you don't understand. You're playing unreal." Like she's like, "No, no, no, but you don't get it. It's like unreal tennis. Like just do that again." Like I can't. She's like, "I'm not even like sad that I lost because like that was insane."
I mean, I've got so many questions I want to ask you, but did that resonate in you at all? Like hearing it from someone who knows you so well, also knows how you can play, but also has been in the latter parts of Grand Slams, particularly the last one at the US Open.
I mean, yes and no. I think it's one of those things where I definitely felt like I was playing really well. I feel like I almost played better in Adelaide than I did in Melbourne. I was playing just unreal tennis. Everything just kind of was coming together really easily and just kind of worked my way through the draw fairly simply. But you know those weeks where you kind of are just like, yeah, like this is just kind of my week. So it was just one of those things where I was like, thanks. Like, yeah, I've been working hard, but like it was a good week. Um, but it was funny after I won. She was like, I feel like I'm very happy for you, but she was like, I feel like everyone else is just catching up to where I've been for 2 weeks. So she's like, I'm not surprised. I'm not like I just expected this to happen.
Yeah, I will give Casey Delacour a lot of credit too, because she picked you as well, because she saw you play a lot in Adelaide. Um, So, before we get to the match and all of the things that I want to talk to you about, what's the last few weeks been like for you? And I just want you to tell people what the moments were like, as in, i.e., the hours after you won the tournament. Like, what are the things that people have no idea? Yeah, it looks all glamorous. You get this big check, you get a trophy, and they think you just walk away. No. Can you tell people what you had to do immediately after the match and then subsequently after that?
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. And even being a player, I had no idea like the hours that go into it. Um, Immediately from the court, I went and I think we did like 6 live TV interviews all in a row. Hadn't even showered yet, had no food. Literally at one point I was like, I'm so thirsty. Like I haven't had a drink of water. It's been like an hour. Um, so did that and then finally had like 20 minutes. Had drug testing that I had to do. Had
Yay.
sh yeah, finally took a shower, shoveled food in my face because I was like, oh, I'm already late. And then probably did another like 2 hours of media. So I think we got back to the hotel at almost 3.
Hmm.
It was like 2:30. And of course, then I'm like, I can't sleep.
Yeah.
So I don't think I even partially fell asleep until like 5 a.m. And then I think it was like 8 o'clock. I had to wake up in the morning and had like more media, more stuff. Did that for the morning. And then finally around like, I think it was probably around noon or 1 o'clock, we were finally like done for the day. And then had to pack and I was just a zombie. I was like so happy, but also it was like I hadn't even taken a breath and absorbed anything that happened. And then we flew back to the States. I went to New York. I had like an entire day of press in New York. Got back uh like Tuesday night, I think. Got back to Florida Tuesday night. And before the season had even started, we had agreed to do one of the commitments that I had to do was for like that Wednesday. So I literally landed and had to go back in and do more stuff the next day. Um, and then it's like the just kind of the follow up last minute interviews and everything. And I think it was like Thursday night. And I finally said to my agent, I was like, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
I can't, I'm gonna put my phone in a drawer. I can't talk, I cannot talk to anyone else.
Yeah.
I can't be on my phone. It's going in a drawer. If anyone needs me, call Bjorn. I will talk to everyone on Monday.
Yeah. So I really wanted you to tell people that because I want people to understand what it's like to and I'm sure you have such respect now for people that do this all the time that have won, 10, 20 plus Grand Slams. It's like this is the way it is. And clearly they're used to it, so they know what's coming. But I wanted people to understand that it's not just all these roses, it's a lot of work, and you can't say no to that kind of thing. So I want to know, there's moments like I'm not putting myself even remotely close to winning a singles Grand Slam, but I remember the first time I won a Grand Slam and I got into the shower after the match, and it was the first time I felt like I was alone. Was there a moment where you were alone, where it all hit you, that you had just won?
Um, I think it was probably like it was kind of after all of the interviews and everything were done because it felt like I was finally able to sit with my own thoughts. Um, and I think I was just kind of like sitting at home and going through like just the normal routine of you're back home, you're making coffee, whatever. And
Oh,
I
so
think
this was back in Florida.
it was like days later. It was like days later. And I finally just sat there and I was like, holy crap, I did that. Like it actually happened. And it's a weird thing when something that you've been like dreaming of and working towards since you were a little kid, and then you finally do it. The like mental and emotional shift that happens where you're like, wait, I actually did it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of are sitting there and you go, wait, what do I do now? Like, oh wait, like what's next? Like I've spent almost 30 years of my life essentially like working towards this thing, and it's always felt like it was, just a little bit far away, and like I had to still keep working for it. And then I did it, and now I have to like totally I feel like I'm like shifting as a person.
Yeah.
Um and I think it's also weird because it's like I think when it's still a dream and it's still a goal, you kind of have like all these bows and rainbows around it, and you're like, it's going to be the greatest moment of my entire life. And then it happens, and you're like, okay, that was really, really great, and I really loved it, and I'd love to do that again. But also, that's not really what I thought it was going to be like.
Yeah, that's interesting. In what way? In what way? Like, is it because you're like, oh well, what's next?
I think there's a little bit of that, and part of that actually, as a tennis player, kind of annoys me that that's like
Yeah.
the first thought
Hmm.
because every other sport they have like their thing, and
Yeah.
then they have all this off time and they get to enjoy it, and for us it's like, oh, there's another tournament 2 days later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't have an
So
off
I
season
think
like 4 months.
no, so I think that's part of it, but I think the other thing was I think for a really long time for me, I had this kind of thought around winning a grand slam and what it would mean and what it would do, and I think in my brain it was like it would be like this life-changing
Yeah.
insane thing that I finally felt validated in all this. And then I think I finally got to the point in my career where I was like, okay, I don't really need to win a Grand Slam to
Yeah.
feel like I've achieved a lot in my career.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of stopped thinking about what it would be like. And then it kind of just all happened in my brain quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was just it was like my brain had to actually get on track with like everything that had happened so quickly.
So I've talked about it many times on my podcast or just in general terms, and I always talk about the subconscious and conscious minds. And so for me, it's like your conscious mind has always said to you, "You're good enough to win this." And yes, when you made your first Grand Slam final, you're like, "Yeah, I'm going to win this match." But there's this little tiny Madison Keys in the back of the. This is how I describe it. It's like the little one that's in the back of the mind going, "No, you're not. You're really not. You're really not. You're really not ready. I don't know if you're good enough. Is it a little bit like you talked about already? You've already said you felt like it was maybe a little bit an attainable thing. You weren't quite sure if you could get there." So I want to know then, like after Adelaide and going into the Aussie and having an extraordinarily bad, tough draw. Like you had arguably the hardest draw in the tournament, which maybe was a good thing for you. I don't know. But was when you played particularly the semis and the final against arguably the two best players in the world, were your subconscious and conscious minds a little bit more aligned, better than they've ever been? Like, was that little Madison sort of being shut down a little bit more?
I think I think there was definitely there's I mean, I think there was still moments of doubt. I
Okay.
think but I think that's the one thing that I'm kind of coming to terms with is that there's always going to be doubt. It's a normal reaction feeling. It's just life. You're never going to go through life and say I'm 100% confident all of the time.
Yep.
It's not
Not happening.
possible.
No.
So I think not having the negative reaction towards doubt and and wasting energy and time being mad at myself
Mhm.
for having doubt and just and almost like fighting against it and saying, well, no, I don't think that. Like, that's not true. I no, I am confident. And instead saying like, okay, like that's a fine feeling to have, but like you can have that feeling and you can also still win this match. So like it doesn't have to be you don't have to be 100% I'm going to win this and
Yep.
everything is going to be perfect. So I think that was a big shift for me that helped a lot. Just kind of knowing even throughout a match, there's going to be ebbs and flows, and there's going to be times when you're super locked in, and then there's going to be times when you kind of get lost in the clouds. And I think the reason that the top players are so good is because when they do get lost in the clouds, they come back so quickly and without judgment.
Mm.
So I think that's kind of where I've gotten a lot better at just kind of being able to refocus and not have the judgment around the negative thoughts or things that or doubts that pop up in my head and wasting time on being annoyed at myself for having them.
Yeah. So how much is, I love so much that you talked about going to regular therapy and not a sports psychologist, which a lot of people do. And I'm a really big believer in eh, it's probably your actual self that's the problem here. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily how you react in a certain point, it's how you perceive yourself. So even the way you've just talked now, how much did actually just going in to actual regular therapy and you're happy in your life. It's not like you were fighting with your boyfriend at the time and like you were going in and I need to fix my, or maybe you were, I don't know. But like, I'm pretty sure you weren't, but
We were fine.
pretty sure beyond be hard to argue with. But like, who was the catalyst that said, "How about this?" Or was that all you? And I got to give Petko a lot, Andrea Pekovic a lot of credit because we were talking about, your racket and Bjorn and the service motion and all the things which we might get to. But Petko's like, yeah, but she's the one that made that decision. She's the one that decided to go to therapy. So I want to know how that came about.
um, so it was it was kind of funny. I definitely went originally and like I sit down and I was like, I want to make tennis better and I want to be good and I want to have fun on the court and she was like, okay. And then she asked me one question about my life and I just started like sobbing. And she was like, do we think maybe this isn't just about tennis? And I was like, oh, maybe you're onto something. um, but I was just to a point, and I think I think the reason that a lot of things are highlighted in tennis is because I mean, it's high stress. You're out there by yourself. I mean, it's just if you have anything going on, you put yourself in tennis and it's just a pressure cooker. So everything just feels amplified. And I think off of the court, it's a lot easier to hide from any sort of things that you're trying to ignore.
Yeah.
And then on a tennis court, it's you double fault on break point at 5 all in the third, and you're ready to just completely lose your marbles.
Yeah.
Um, so I think for me, I definitely started in the thought of like, I just want to make tennis better. My life is great. I'm fine. I feel great about myself. I just, get really nervous during tennis matches. Um, but I was really struggling with my relationship with tennis, and that's kind of a hard place to be when it's not only your job, but your job basically consumes 95% of your life. Um, and it was really kind of starting to bleed over into my personal life. And I think at the core of it, it was just how I felt about myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's the tricky part about, um, I mean, about just deeply caring about your career path and what you are very passionate about is it's hard to separate the two things. So when you feel some way about something that you're doing, it's all just one.
Yeah.
So I was starting to kind of just really struggle just overall, and I would say that it was just kind of starting to become a little bit more apparent to a lot of people that, hey, I think maybe you need to go talk to someone. And it's obviously more obvious on a tennis court. So it started with maybe it'll help the tennis and all that. And then from there, it was really, you know, okay, I think I need to like work on some of my own beliefs that have kind of started to become pretty deep inside.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think it's such a phenomenal thing that you're talking about it so openly because I think you'll help so many people realize that, there's so much, especially someone as good as you. You cannot not help but hear people say, but Madison's so good. She hits the ball bigger than everybody. She should be winning these matches. And at some point it has to start you have to I would imagine you would start thinking, well, why the fuck am I not winning these matches? You know what I mean? And then it starts to chip away at you just as a human being. You're just like, well, I'm just not good enough, I guess. So I'm so proud of you for doing that, because that's a huge step to be able to go in and like dig really deep into your own life. So before we get back to the match, I want to know quickly, who was the first phone call that you made after you won? Because I mean, the people that you love so much that have been in your corner, Kayla and Rashad and beyond, they were there immediately, in tears, and it was amazing. But who was the first phone call you made?
I called my mom. Yeah.
And what was her reaction?
Um, Honestly, it was funny. It was a lot of swear words,
I love your
followed by
mom.
followed by tears, followed by "I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it." I mean, it was funny. It was funny that, and I was like, I am my mother's child.
You are definitely, definitely. I mean, I love that. I figured it would be your mom, but you never know. Max might want you to call him first for some reason, but
No, he was a mess. He was like, "You can't call me. I'm still weeping. Like I can't talk to you for a few days because I'm just gonna just weep."
have you watched the match since?
I've watched some highlights. I
I
haven't
have
sat
watched the
down.
match, just so you know, I've watched the match 3 times. I swear to God. I've watched it 3 times. It was such a good tennis match. But anyway, go on.
I've watched some highlights, but I haven't actually sat there and just like watched it fully. But yeah, there were some highlights, and I feel like there's a few points that are just like on
Repeat.
replay in
Which
my head.
ones? Tell me which ones.
Honestly, the one that I still cannot believe was 5 all 30 all in the third.
Mary Jo
the
said,
serve followed by the return, and I have no idea. But I remember just even like how I reacted after I made it.
you
It
did your
was
little
like
turn.
I was like, oh, that was a big point.
Yeah. Well, I have to say to you, clearly I was doing the coverage courtside, and Mary Jo Fernandez, I believe, I'm not sure, 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain she said, just deadpan, just went, that is the shot of the tournament. Or it might have been the match. It was like you couldn't say anything other than that because you were on the edge of that precipice there, right? And, we all know, we can all talk about the US Open match, and they were so similar, the match with Sabalenka. Like you won the first set 6-love. And I was thinking, did you think about losing a game in the first set of the Australian Open just so you didn't do the same thing?
You know what's funny? I didn't even think of the match at the US Open at all. Didn't
What?
even pop into my head.
That is remarkable because I just getting ready to talk to you today, I sort of, wanted to go back and watch that match because I did the match, but I couldn't really remember. I know you're up a set in 5-3, but I have to say Sabalenka played off her tree from a set in 5-3. So,
I mean, she played well, and I think she played so well. And I think the thing that going into this final, I kept saying to myself was she played brave.
yes,
She went after her shots. She didn't back up. She went after everything. And I really wanted to make sure that I did that this match because I felt like at the US Open, I let my foot off the gas pedal
100%.
and gave her more opportunities than she already is capable of creating by herself.
I actually wrote down here 5-3, 15-30, lazy legs.
Yeah.
Because you at 15-30, when you had a chance to maybe win the match at 5-3 in the second set, you had a ball that was kind of like mid-range. It was like one of those ones you could have got around and hit your forehand and you chose to hit a backhand and you missed it. And I remember thinking, if that was the Australian Open this year, you would have absolutely got around and crushed an inside-out forehand, which you did on match point. So I think that's the difference. And that's an interesting, so you can learn from your losses. And you did.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What was the conversation with Bjorn after the first set? I saw you go over, you had a bit of a laugh actually. She went off the court, I think, and I think he might have been giving you a bit of crap about your slice backhand because you went into a little bit of negative slice backhand. Maybe it was after the second set. But you guys, like, what was the conversation that you were that was the primary thing that he was trying to get across to you most of the time, particularly at the end?
I think it was really just trying to get on the offense before she did.
Hmm.
And I I think that that was kind of the key. And I think the biggest thing in the second set, I thought she started doing a really great job of mixing things up.
Yeah.
She started using her drop shot so well. And I think, I don't even really remember what exactly we were talking about, but it was really just try to stay on offense so that she can't do that as much
Yeah.
and just keep trying to stay close in the match and then just try to sink your teeth into it. And I remember before we switched sides, he kind of just said, like, it's fine. Like, you're going into a tiebreaker if you lose this game. Like, go after some of the returns a little bit, just because I was kind of making some, but they weren't good enough that she was usually either hitting a winner or getting on offense on her first ball. So he was like, it's fine. Just like go after a little bit more. Like, take a step back and take full cuts.
Yeah. I looked at the stats today of the match, and you hit two return winners the entire match, and you
It
hit
was it
one.
last game.
You hit one in the third set, and it was the love 15. And I was sitting next to, as you know, Laura Robson, who's one of your best friends, and I hit her on the arm, and I was like, "Holy shit, she she's going to win this match." And it was just like, I want you to talk a little bit about. I always talk about the slope at the Australian Open. There's a little bit of a slope, the downhill slope from the president's end down. How much did that help, like in the last game? Because in the game before, you gestured to Bjorn because he wanted you to step up on the return, and you said, I'm can't." I don't know exact words, but you were basically like, I can't really do it." Tell people how at home how the slope is a little bit difficult at the Australian Open, and how being down one end to the other is very difficult on return and serve.
Well, I think it's a little bit of the slope, and it's also if there's any sort of breeze,
It always comes
it's
from the end.
it's like and it's not, in my opinion, it's not super typical, especially on a big stadium, for it to be from one baseline to the other. You usually have some sort of crosswind,
Yeah.
but this one is pretty strong from directly behind you. So I think that along with the slope, that one side is it's easier to return and it's harder to serve.
Oh, you think it's harder
Especially
to serve with the wind and the slope
no, if you're on the other side.
on the other
I'm
side?
saying if the wind is behind you or
Yeah,
the wind is in front of you, when the wind is in your face and you're serving uphill,
it's
it
brutal.
you can feel you can feel the difference and you kind of feel like you're it's like, okay, usually my serve is like supposed to help me and all of a sudden I feel like I'm like behind somehow. Um, so I think I kind of knew that was there, and I I just kind of was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna try to go a little bit extra on these just because at least the wind's not going to be pushing it into me.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, for whatever reason, I just was like way more locked in that game.
Yeah, I mean, it was so impressive, but take me to the match point when you got to match point 1540, which is a little bit of a buffer, but also at the same time, it's kind of like it almost makes you more nervous because you're like, oh my God, I've got
Because
two.
you're like, oh my God, if I lose this one, it's 40-30, and then if I lose that one, then it's deuce.
We hate to tell people, but that is exactly what goes through the mind. So what went through your mind at 1540? Because you played a
I
phenomenal point to get to 1540. You got a couple of balls back that maybe people thought you weren't going to get back, you speedy little devil.
um I think at 40-15 it was just I just kind of kept thinking like she's probably gonna hit a great serve because I feel like whenever you back her into a corner is when she plays her best. So it was, you know, just expect it. Obviously, hit a great serve, couldn't do anything about it. Walked over to the other side, and I think all I really said to myself before the point was just try to have a good like deep middle return
Yeah.
just to try to be neutral. Like just I just don't want to be on defense right away. And I did. And I think I actually hit it better than I thought. And the first ball came and the first forehand I hit, I didn't hit it clean. And I wanted it to go more off the court and it went up the middle. And I remember thinking, oh shit, like she might do something with that. And then she didn't. And it kind of came back to me. And I was like, well, it's now or never. You might as well just go for it.
So really, that's when the ball came back to you, you were a little bit sort of semi-surprised that, oh shit, she didn't do something with a lesser shot of yours. And you said, fuck it, I'm going for it.
Yeah, because I really wanted to. I mean, the whole point and the whole game plan for the match was to try to be on offense as quickly as possible. So as I kind of mishit it, I was a little annoyed at myself because I was like, oh, I should have done something better with the ball that I got.
Yeah.
Um, and so the ball that came back, I was like, okay, I can definitely do something with this, and I don't. I want to make sure I do more than the ball that I just hit, or else I'm definitely not getting another opportunity.
When it came off your racket, did you know it was a straight winner? Because she was leaning or
No, I think I was still like
prepared?
waiting for something to come back. And because I feel like it is funny. I feel like watching the replays and watching the highlights, it's like it takes me a second to actually be like, oh shit, I did win. It's over.
You know, there were crazy stats in the third set, and I wrote a couple of them down, and I have no idea if you looked at the stats, probably not, but you were getting crushed on your second serve in the third set, and she was winning 82% on her second serve. And you were winning 54%. She only won 68% of her first serve, and you won 85. So the difference with her hitting first serves, you were actually better off hitting her first serve. Is that not a crazy stat in the third set?
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that stat when I saw it. And you guys, there was 1 point that separated you in the match and 1 point that separated you in the third set. That's how close the match was overall.
I mean, I felt like it was one of those matches where her level wasn't amazing at the start. Mine was pretty good. And then I think she really raised her level in the second set, and I hadn't quite caught up yet. And then I felt like the third set was just
Dogfight.
really high level tennis on both sides.
No, it was incredible third set, which is why I think it's so fascinating that you didn't think about the US Open because they were so similar in so many ways. Other than the fact that you were well ahead at the US Open, I felt like there was so when I've watched it since that you there was very similar. So I'm pretty impressed that you didn't think about the US Open in that match. It's probably what helped you get through it, to be quite honest, is that you didn't think about it. So after you win, there's just tears. It's just such a great moment. Everybody, so many people were so happy for you, Maddie, including me. I mean, there was a lot of tears. Mary Jo Fernandez was having a hard time in the booth. I was having a hard time. I was trying to get through my last little bit about you. The thing that impressed me the most is that you won that match. She did not lose that. You won that match, which is such a great feeling. But also talking about what you said about what you had to do in the days after is why I'm so happy that you didn't go to the Middle East. What discussion was that like with Bjorn? I had a discussion with him actually when I saw him that night, and I was like, don't let her go to the Middle East. I was like, because one thing Sam Stosur said after the match, I did a recap with her on my podcast, and she said, the one regret I have after winning the US Open was going to Asia because I didn't give myself the time to take it all in and enjoy it. So what was the reasoning behind not going to the Middle East, and what's the thought process now going into Indian Wells?
Well, there was a lot of back and forth on it. Um, and I obviously played the whole tournament with my leg taped up as well, which it wasn't ever
Oh,
really a hindrance,
mm,
but it was also still something that I was like, it's obviously not 100%. So that was obviously also part of, is also a factor in it.
yeah,
Um, but it was, I think by the time I got home and had actually like finally had just a day at home where I didn't have to do anything, I think I would have had to have I think it was like 8 days, and I was gonna have to travel again.
yeah,
And obviously the flight home
brutal.
over, it's like a 28-hour day of travel.
Yeah,
And so I was thinking, okay, 8 days later, I'm gonna have to do another 20-hour plus travel day, play 2 weeks, fly all the way to the West Coast,
yeah,
to then go to the East Coast, and then you have a few weeks, and then you go back to Europe. And I just, I was like, okay, there's no way I can get on a plane in 8 days.
yeah,
And I was so, even the week that I started hitting, I think I started hitting like the Monday after we got home. So I had 4 or 5 days off. And even then, I was still exhausted, just
yeah,
mentally, emotionally, just so tired. And I kept kind of thinking like, oh, maybe we still just do Dubai, but then it's also like it's so far
yeah,
for one tournament.
yeah,
And it was just kind of like the pros and cons of, do you go all that way? Maybe have a good tournament, maybe not. And it felt so rushed.
yeah,
And it took me like a full week of practice to finally feel like I was back to myself.
yeah,
And so I was like, why am I going to go put myself in a bad situation where I'm finally feeling better on the court? I'm finally feeling like myself again.
yeah,
Why am I going to try to like rush and put myself in the situation where I don't feel ready because I'm not? I haven't had enough time to fully recover. Why would I do that to myself?
yeah, yeah. I think that's called maturity, and I think that's called I'm serious when I tell you this. Like it was the one thing that Sam said in the pod. She's like, I hope she doesn't. I said, I have a feeling she probably won't go, but she goes, I hope she doesn't go because it's the one regret that I have because it's so overwhelming what you've just gone through, and you have to take it in, right? And one of the things that Sam said is you also have to always remember just because you won the Australian Open, or in Sam's case, the US Open, doesn't mean you're going to win the next match. So you have to be willing to be prepared to, go through the hard work again and deal with that. Because as you already pointed out, tennis is really hard. You don't have an off season to enjoy this big win. So how has everything been like preparing now and getting yourself ready for an Indian Wells? Like, where do you feel like you are emotionally and mentally?
I feel like it's been a good amount of time for me to be back on court. And I feel like, I mean, like I said, it felt like it took 7 to 10 days to finally find my feet again. And I think the other thing that's really funny is, and I'm sure Sam experienced it as well, is now all of a sudden you're dealing with your own expectations all of a sudden dramatically changing.
So what are they?
Um,
I'm just kidding.
but I think I've had to be really honest with myself and know that that's going to be something that I'm going to have to work through because it's a totally normal thing to happen. But it's also like no one really thrives when you're going out and thinking like I have to win everything now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think that's going to be, I mean, that's going to be my new challenge, and obviously um, it's a really good place to obviously be in to have to like learn how to deal with that pressure because it means that you've done some really big things. But it's definitely something new that I'm going to have to figure out how to weather the storm that I'm creating. Um,
Especially in
so
the
I think,
US.
yeah, especially in the US. And I think it's also been a good amount of time for me to get to the point of realization because at first I was like, yeah, no, I'm totally cool. Like I'm just gonna think this exact same way and everything will be fine. And it was like, okay, well, you're lying to yourself. So once we get to the point of like honesty, then we can move forward and we can work that way.
So have you been back to your therapist?
Oh, multiple times.
Okay, so great. I'm glad you said that. What was the first conversation? What was the first like 1, 2 minutes like when you walked in the door to see her or him?
Um, just like immediately tears. I was like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Um, but then it was really good because even after my match, I got the assignment to do a lot of writing and just make sure that you put all of it out there and really kind of live in all of the moments. And um, there was definitely a little bit like I had already kind of gone into, okay, but what next?
Yeah.
And she was very quick to be like, let's let's take this win. Let's like live in the win a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Just to just really like just appreciate it. It's just like you work so hard for it.
Yeah.
And it would be such a shame to not actually enjoy it and just immediately shift into, okay, there's a new tournament next week. Like, gotta go do that.
Does it get to be a little bit more like exciting what you now know that you're capable of doing under the most incredible duress? I mean, you, as I said, for people that don't know, your draw was insane and you beat some of the best, if not arguably the best players in the world at the Grand Slam. You beat Iga, you beat Rybakina, you beat Sabalenka. It's like you beat Svitolina, who's been there a million times. Like you beat Danielle Collins. Like you beat so many people in that tournament that know what it's like to be deep into a Grand Slam and to win them. So does it give you the impotence and no pressure? Because, I've been somebody that's just believed in you so much, but I also now know, watch out, people, because Madison knows now how to win the big matches. And so how much does that actually excite you going
I
forward?
think it's been really exciting, and I think I feel really grounded as
Mm,
well. I think I have just some of the best people around me, and it's probably the most honest that I've been, just where I'm at and what's going on in
yeah,
my brain. And I feel like they have helped me navigate so many moments. And even before I played Iga in the semis, my fitness trainer just looked at me. He said, "You know that like you're worthy of this. Like you can do it." And just like immediate tears. And and then he made me say it back to him, and I was like, "I can't. Like I actually can't say it." And he's like, "No, no, no. Like you're gonna say it." And I mean, it's little things like that that I don't think people like saying that, I don't think people really understand like how much of an impact that makes,
Yeah.
but it makes a huge impact. And it's just that little bit that, deep in the third that you have something to hang on to. So I think I'm really excited about obviously what I can do, but I think I'm more excited just with the people that are around me and getting to have, hopefully a really good season, but just I mean, I've just been so happy to be at this point in my career and have the people that I have. Um, it's honestly just kind of like icing on the cake.
Yeah, I think that's why we saw all the tears from your team. We knew we were going to get tears from Bjorn, but to see Kayla, to see Rashad, like just to see them because they know how much, and we know we see you guys together all the time. We know what you guys have been through, and particularly with your your injuries and everything that you've had. I mean, Wimbledon last year, I thought you were playing unbelievable, but does that give you a lot of hope, knowing that if physically you can stand up to it, now mentally you know you can? How much does that help you? Because I can tell you, I have said this to people, I'm not putting any pressure on you, but you are good enough to win every single Grand Slam because you can play on every surface. So, not to put pressure on you, not to do it to yourself, but I want you to feel that way. Like when you go into those slams now, that's where your head should be. You are worthy of that. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, well, I definitely feel like I've it's kind of like it's like okay, you finally knock the wall down that
Yeah.
you had been struggling against.
Mhm.
Um, and I think now it's such a it's such a exciting place to be because you know how you knocked the wall down and
Yeah.
you know that you have people also there that can help support you through that. And I think I mean, there's so many weeks of the year
Yeah.
you can, that we can do really, great things. And I feel like I'm finally like probably the most me and the most connected to myself that I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's helped me just so much on the court.
So I didn't ask you, I asked you about the first moment where you had by yourself, where you like sunk in, but was there a moment when you were like with Bjorn, I don't know, laying in bed or waking up in the morning and you just looked at each other and went, oh my fucking God, we did it.
I think it was that moment actually happened pretty quickly, but we got back to the room and it was like literally like almost 3 a.m. Both so delirious and tired, but just on cloud nine. And he just looked at me and he was like, "Holy shit, like you just won the Australian Open. Like that actually happened." And I was like, "I know, it's crazy."
I,
But it's been really cool to I mean, I think it's fairly rare in the sport to be able to have your significant other when you win the big moments, but to really like do it together,
yeah.
um, I mean, it's honestly one of the coolest things.
Yeah. I mean, we know we've talked about the service change, which by the way, I thought you should have done years ago as well. Just saying. I was like, why doesn't she step up on a serve? I don't get it. You're serving the ball so much harder now. You hit zero double faults in the final, zero, which is unbelievable. Considering I know that you were struggling a little bit with getting the timing on the second serve because it felt a little bit different, but that also shows to people at home, like it doesn't matter how old you are, and relatively you're still so young, but at 30 you're kind of like, whoa, shit, I've been playing professional tennis now for 15 years. Like, really? I'm going to change my service motion. I'm going to change my racket. I'm going to change all my strings. Like, this is crazy. But also, it shows you, and Petco said that also shows how gutsy you were to do that because there's been some people that have changed rackets and changed this and changed that, and they've gone downhill real fast. I think about Radwanska when she changed the racket. She couldn't win a match after that. So it's like that was gutsy of you, and the belief and the trust that you obviously have in Bjorn and his tennis nerdy brain. It's just awesome to see. I just like him. I love him so much. Who was the coolest person that reached out to you? Or you got
Um,
the text or the call and you were like, that was
um, Lil Wayne DM'd me. We had like a back and forth, which was very funny. But it was funny. I was making breakfast one morning and I got a phone call and I didn't have the number saved and I was I just answered. I don't know why. But I was like, hello. And she's like, Maddie, it's Kim. I was like, she's like, yeah, it's Kim. And I was like, oh my God, thanks, Kim.
We are talking about
Which
Kim
it,
Clijsters.
yes. And it meant the world to me because after I lost the US Open final, I saw her right after the match and she gave me the biggest hug and the biggest kiss on the cheek and said, it's okay. I've been there. You're gonna do it. Like it'll be okay, I promise. But I mean, it just was like so full circle that that was probably my favorite.
I think that's so interesting because everyone thinks, oh, this person or that person, but it just shows you that you go back to being a little kid, right? And Kim Clijsters was like your idol, and you play so similarly to her. She just wishes she had your serve. But anyway, all right, I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions because you've been so great to spend a lot of time. But I did put out a question to social media, and I wanted my listeners to like throw in some questions to you. And one of them was, how do you balance the work and home life dynamics with your husband, Bjorn?
You know what's funny? Everyone asks us that, and I feel like it's not really something that we struggle with. I think partially because since we both played already, we were so good at being tennis
Switch.
or life.
Yeah,
And it's, I don't even know if we necessarily ever really like switch on or switch off. It's just so a part of our life
yeah.
that, I mean, in the middle of dinner, and again, like you said, he's like the biggest tennis nerd on the planet. And I swear to God, he'll wake up at like 5 a.m. sometimes and like be thinking of just the most uh, like absurd, random thing. And then all of a sudden he's like on YouTube. It's like 5:30 in the morning and he's on YouTube like looking something up because he like wanted to see something. But um but it'll just happen like at breakfast where I've been struggling on something in practice and
And it'll just,
all of a sudden it'll click for him and he was like, "Oh, I know who hit this ball amazingly well." And then he's like searching some player literally from any era, which is always the thing that blows my mind. And he's like, okay, so you see how they do that, and like you guys have similar grips, and like, so that'll happen at breakfast or at dinner or whatever. Or in the middle of practice, like something will pop into my head where I'm like, oh shit, like someone's coming to the house tomorrow at this time. Like, I totally forgot. You need to like put that in your phone so that you know when someone's at the house. So it's just, I mean, we're really good at just kind of bouncing in and out. And uh, he's very good about, as much as it keeps him awake at night, he knows
of
that,
letting you be.
yeah, like there's times when if I'm on the couch watching HGTV while scrolling TikTok, like it's not the time to try to bring up, hey, so in practice tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That would be an interesting. Well, but you guys are such a good relationship. You're able to be like, talk to the hand, not now. All right, this was a great question. This is the last one from social because I said I'd only ask one or two. So a lot of the answers you've already given have been questions that people have asked. But based on her experience, what advice would she give to an aspiring champion to let go of the weight of expectation and help them reach their full potential? Was there a key aspect in your mental work that triggered that mindset shift? And that was Ophelia. I think I got that name right. But that was a great question, I thought.
That's a very good question. I think it'd be hard to just give you a blanket answer that would just everyone would feel the same because obviously everyone's very different. I know for me that it took a lot of kind of talking through things, and I think as I started talking about more things, I started learning things about myself, kind of discovering things that I thought about myself that I didn't even know that was really there. But one day, one day we were talking and I was saying something, and I remember saying the statement. It was something along the lines of, I I've I don't think that I have played to my potential because I was supposed to be great and I haven't reached that yet. And saying that out loud for the first time I really didn't think that was something that I felt about myself. And I had to really deal with feeling like I had failed and getting over the hurdle of if I never win a Grand Slam, I'm not a failure. That's not the blanket, that's not like the line of you've had a successful career or you haven't.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really hard kind of place to live as a tennis player because that kind of is what a lot of people make as success.
Yeah.
And you look around and you say, like, Svitolina has had a phenomenal career. Phenomenal. Like, in no world would anyone say that she was a failure,
Yes.
ever.
Yeah.
And she never won a Grand Slam. But, like, and I think it was a hard thing for me because I would look at other people and I'd be like, no, they've had phenomenal careers. Like, they're not a failure. And I had to turn that back on myself and say, well, wait, no, like I've done some pretty good things. Like I've had a pretty successful career. Like I would definitely, if you told me at, 10 years old, the achievements that I have, I would take that. Like I would say that was a really good career. So that was kind of my that was kind of my struggle to work through. And it really just all came back to not having won a slam. It felt like I needed it in order to have any sort of validation for my career. And I needed to figure out how to find my own validation, not in the trophies that I had or I didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to ever worry about ever saying that to yourself, even though you realize, even if you hadn't won it, your life would not and your career would not have been a failure because as you said, you've achieved some incredible things. Is there part of you, before we end, is there a part of you that thinks I'm going to keep striving for more? Like, I know that you can improve your forehand drop shot. That's a joke. But let's face it, if you have that on clay, Maddie, you're going to kill it. You're going to kill it. Everyone's going to be running back, and you can just hit that little dropper. Might be good at Indian Wells. I'm just saying. The volleys. Listen, I know Beyond appreciates like helping you with things. I can help you with that little inside out backhand volley. That's my go-to. I can help you with that one.
I mean, yeah, I definitely think that I feel like at this point, the kind of the sky is the limit. Um, I know that it's funny because, when you're 30 in sports, it's like, oh, it's a miracle she's still
No,
out there.
you're peaking. You're just at the start of the peak.
But it's like I feel like as long as my body can hold up and as long as I can stay healthy, I feel like there's just still so much room to improve, and I feel like the best physically that I've felt in many, many years. So I feel like there's just still so much opportunity.
Well, I just got excited thinking about it because you know how much I love you. You know how much I believe in you. So I'm just saying, clay, that's your jam too. Grass, we know you can play well on grass. And now that you're serving with the feet up, and you get a little bit more pop on that serve, even more free points. And the US Open, we know how well you play there. So no pressure. I just think, why not go for a career Grand Slam in 1 year? Let's go.
Yeah, that's really shooting for the moon.
Talk to the little Maddie down there. I'm sure little Maddie will agree right now. But anyway, Maddie, I love you so much. I'm so freaking proud of you. I got to see you coming out of your press. I was leaving to go get transportation and you walked down from all your media, which was like 2:30 in the morning, and I was leaving. And I just looked at you and I'm just so incredibly, I know how much you've gone through. We've seen each other in a lot of hallways and locker rooms, a lot of tears. And it was just great to see you crying, knowing that you finally did something that we all know you're capable of, and you did it so well.
Thank you.
I'll see you in Indian Wells. I'll come and watch your first match, and I can't wait for it. Maddie Keys, thank you so much for joining me today on the pod.
Thanks.
All right. Love you. See you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Say hi to Bjorn.
I will.